Thomas the tank engine was grumbling to the other engines. I spend my time pulling coaches about ready for you to take out on journeys. The other engines laughed. Why can't I pull passenger trains too? You're too impatient, they said. You'd be sure to leave something behind. Rubbish, said Thomas. I'll show you. One night, he and Henry were alone. Henry was ill. The men worked hard, but he didn't get better. He felt just as bad next morning. Henry usually pulled the first train, and Thomas had to get his coaches ready. If Henry is ill, he thought, perhaps I shall pull his train. Thomas ran to find the coaches. Come along, he fussed. There's plenty of time, they grumbled. Thomas took them to the platform and wanted to run round in front at once. But his driver wouldn't let him. Don't be impatient, Thomas. Thomas waited and waited. The people got in. The guard and station master walked up and down. The porter banged the doors, and still Henry didn't come. Thomas got more and more excited. The fat controller came to see what was the matter, and the guard and the station master told him about Henry. Find another engine, he ordered. There's only Thomas, they said. You'll have to do it then, Thomas. Be quick now. So Thomas ran round to the front and back down on the coaches ready to start. Don't be impatient, said his driver. Wait till everything is ready. But Thomas was too excited to listen. What happened then?
Excited and not really listening.
I pulled the lever by mistake. Anyhow, Thomas started. As he passed the first signal box, men waved and shouted, but he didn't stop. They're waving because I'm such a splendid engine, he thought importantly. Henry says it's hard to pull trains, but I think it's easy. Hurry, 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 he puffed, pretending to be like Gordon. People have never seen me pulling a train before. It's nice of them to wave, and he whistled. Peep, peep, thank you. Then he came to a signal at danger. Bother, he thought. I must stop, and I was going so nicely too. What a nuisance signals are. He blew an angry peep, peep on his whistle. The signalman ran up. Hello, Thomas, he said. What are you doing here? I'm pulling a train, said Thomas. Can't you see? Where are your coaches, then? Thomas looked back. Why, bless me, he said, if we haven't left them behind. Yes, said the signalman. You'd better go back quickly and fetch them. Poor Thomas was so sad he nearly cried. Cheer up, said his driver. Let's go back quickly and try again. Station, all the passengers were talking at once. They were telling the fat controller what a bad railway it was. But when Thomas came back, they saw how sad he was and couldn't be cross. He was coupled to the train, and this time he really pulled it. But for a long time afterwards, the other engines laughed at Thomas and said, Look, there's Thomas, who wanted to pull a train, but forgot about the coaches. Thomas the tank engine was ill. Workmen had tried to make him better, but it was no use. Edward must take you to the works, said the fat controller. Thomas felt very miserable. Then the fat controller spoke to Duck. I want you to help Percy and Toby while Thomas is away. Duck was delighted. He already knew Percy and soon made friends with Toby and Bertie. Terence the tractor gave him a big welcome too. Take care of Thomas's coaches, he advised. He's sure to miss them while he's away. Duck was very gentle with the coaches. Annie and Clarabel were impressed. Such nice manners, they told each other. It really is a pleasure to go out with him. When Thomas came back, Annie and Clarabel told him how well Duck had managed. Thomas was so pleased to be home that he soon forgot to be jealous. The works had left Thomas's handbrake very stiff. It made his brakes seem as if they were hard on, when in fact they were not. As a result, he and his coaches often overran the platform. Thomas found this most embarrassing. Gradually, his driver and fireman learned to be extra careful. But one day, Thomas's fireman was ill, and a relief man took his place. The fireman had fastened the coupling and joined the driver and station master on the platform to wait for Henry's passengers. The fireman had forgotten all about Thomas's handbrake. Thomas simmered happily. Not long now, he thought, as he saw Henry slowly approaching. But Thomas's brakes were not hard on, and suddenly he felt his wheels begin to move. He tried to stop, but he couldn't without his driver and fireman. He tried to whistle a warning, but he couldn't do that either. The guard, driver, fireman, and passengers were all stranded on the platform. "Stop! Stop!" shrieked Annie and Clarabel. But Thomas, with plenty of steam, kept on going. The alarm went out down the line. "Stop the runaway!" There, ready for action, was Harold the helicopter. The inspector had made a plan, and together they took off into the sky. At last, Thomas was tiring. "I need to stop. I need to stop, he panted wearily. As they neared the next station, Thomas saw Harold land. They entered the platform slowly enough for the inspector to act. Judging his moment, the inspector scrambled into the cab and screwed the brake hard on. At last, Thomas stopped. Both he and the inspector were very relieved. Then they thanked Harold. Think nothing of it. Well, Harold, glad to be of service any time. Phew, remarked the inspector. You must never let this happen again, Thomas. Wearily, Thomas agreed with him. Toby and Henrietta are enjoying their new job on the island of Sodor, but they do look old-fashioned and need new paint. James was very rude whenever he saw them. Ugh, what dirty objects, he would say. At last, Toby lost patience. James, he asked, why are you red? I am a splendid engine, answered James. Ready for anything. You never see my paint dirty. Oh, said Toby innocently, that's why you once needed bootlaces, to be ready, I suppose. James went redder than ever and snorted off. It was such an insult to be reminded of the time a bootlace had been used to mend a hole in his coaches. At the end of the line, James left his coaches and got ready for his next train. It was a slow goods, stopping at every station to pick up and set down trucks. James hated slow goods trains. Dirty trucks from dirty sidings. Blech! Starting with only a few, he picked up more and more trucks at each station, till he had a long train. At first, the trucks behaved well, but James bumped them so crossly that they were determined to pay him back. Back. Presently, they approached the top of Gordon's Hill. Heavy goods trains halt here to pin down their brakes. James had had an accident with trucks before and should have remembered this. Wait, James, wait, said the driver, but James wouldn't wait. He was too busy thinking what he would say to Toby when they next met. The truck's chance had come. Hurrah, hurrah, they laughed, and banging their buffers, they pushed him down the hill. On, yelled the trucks. I've got to stop, I've got to stop, groaned James. Through the station they thundered. Disaster lay ahead. Something sticky splashed all over James. He had run into 2 tar wagons and was black from smoke box to cab. He was more dirty than hurt, but the tar wagons and some trucks were all to pieces. Toby and Percy were sent to help and came as quickly as they could. Look here, Percy, exclaimed Toby. Whatever is that dirty object? That's James, didn't you know? It's James's shape, said Toby. But James is a splendid red engine, and you never see his paint dirty. James pretended he hadn't heard. Toby and Percy cleared away the unhurt trucks and helped James home. The Fat Controller met them. "Well done, Percy and Toby." He turned to James. "Fancy letting your trucks run away. I am surprised. You're not fit to be seen. You must be cleaned at once. Toby shall have a new coat of paint." "Please, sir, can Henrietta have one too?" said Toby. "Certainly, Toby." "Oh, thank you, sir. She will be pleased." All James could do was watch Toby as he ran off happily with the news.
Respect for Gordon. The engines of the Sodor Railway were always busy. Thomas puffed to the beaches with happy holidaymakers. And Gordon proudly pulled the express. Gordon thought he was the strongest, fastest and cleanest engine on the whole of the railway. But one thing bothered him. His firebox rattled as it cooled down at night. Gordon knew his rattle stopped the other engines from getting to sleep. That night, Gordon's firebox went click-clunk, click-clunk. Thomas and Percy started to chuckle. "Rattler Gordon's keeping it all awake," peeped Percy. "The only engines keeping other engines awake," huffed Gordon crossly, "are little engines with very bad manners." But secretly he felt rather embarrassed. In the morning, Percy teased Gordon again. "Rattlebox is awake at last," he puffed out loud. Gordon ignored Percy. He did not like being called names. "I'm the strongest and the best," he told himself. "Strongest and best, strongest and best, cleanest and fastest, and pull the express." He wished the other engines would remember that. Later, Gordon pulled into Knapford Station. "Oh, look," laughed Emily. "Rattler Gordon's here. He's pulling the Click-Clunk Express." This made Gordon very cross indeed, especially because Diesel overheard. "I hope your click-clunk gets better soon," oiled Diesel. "See you later, Rattler." Gordon was very cross indeed. He decided it was time the other engines learned to treat him properly. So later at the water tank, he pulled up ahead of James. James was surprised. At Knapford, Percy had brought Gordon's coaches into number 1 platform. "Off you go now, Percy," said Gordon. "Number 1 is my platform. Little engines shouldn't hang around." "You're a boastful, bossy, big blue boiler," Percy muttered to himself crossly. Later, Gordon told his friends to give a polite toot-toot whenever they saw him. "But why?" asked Thomas. He was very puzzled. "Because," huffed Gordon grandly, "I'm the strongest and the best." And he steamed away. "You can toot at him if you like," wished Emily, "but I'm not going to." Gordon steamed across the island. He felt very pleased with himself. He was sure the other engines would forget his clunk-click and treat him properly now. He saw Emily coming. He listened for her toot-toot, but Emily didn't toot at all. This made Gordon very cross. He was so cross that he didn't see the signal telling him to stop. And he didn't see the goods train ahead. until it was too late. Luckily, no one was hurt, but Gordon came off the rails. He was covered in gooey red jam. As Gordon waited to be put back on the rails, Percy arrived.
Hello, Gordon.
Peeped Percy.
I see you're not the cleanest engine anymore.
Then James puffed up.
I don't think you'll be pulling the express for a while, Gordon,
joked James. Finally, Thomas arrived. Gordon's a mess, Gordon's a mess. He's the largest and jammiest, puffed Thomas cheekily. At last, Gordon was back on the rails. He felt very foolish indeed. Edward pushed him to the fitter's yard. Gordon had to stay at the fitter's yard for a long time.
Thomas the tank engine wouldn't stop being a nuisance. Night after night he kept the other engines awake. I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world. The other engines didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine and felt sorry for Thomas. I've got some trucks to take home tomorrow. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard. Thank you, said Thomas. That will be nice. Next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find trucks. Now, trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing. And I'm sorry to say they play tricks on an engine who is not used to them. Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. Peep, peep, answered Thomas, and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. Oh, 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 they screamed, wait, Thomas, wait. But Thomas wouldn't wait. Come on, he puffed. All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss, grumbled the trucks. Thomas began going. Faster and faster. Whee! He whistled as he rushed through Henry's tunnel. Hurry, hurry, called Thomas. He was feeling very proud of himself, but the trucks grew crosser and crosser. At last, Thomas slowed down as he came to Gordon's Hill. Steady now, steady, warned the driver as they reached the top. He began to put on the brakes. We're stopping, called Thomas. No, 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 answered the trucks, bumping into each other. Go on, go on. Before the driver could stop them, they had pushed Thomas down the hill and were rattling and laughing behind him. Poor Thomas tried hard to stop them from making him go too fast. Stop pushing, he hissed, but the trucks took no notice. Go on, they giggled in their silly way. There's the station. Oh dear, what shall I do? He cried. He rattled straight through and swerved into the goods yard. Thomas shut his eyes. I must stop. When he opened his eyes, he saw he had stopped just in front of the buffers. There watching him was the fat controller. What are you doing here, Thomas? He asked. I brought Edward's trucks, Thomas answered. Why did you come so fast? I didn't mean to. I was pushed, said Thomas. You've got a lot to learn about trucks then, little Thomas. After pushing them about here for a few weeks, you'll know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine.
We make a team together. 1, 2, 3. We go full steam together. Him, you, me. Best of friends forever we'll be. Yeah, yeah. Better together. We need our friends nearby us every day, so they can help and guide us every way. And we know there's a place they will stay. Yeah, yeah. Forever beside us. Well, there's nothing that I couldn't do when I'm steaming along next to you. We make a team together. 1, 2, 3. We go full steam together. Him, you, me. We roll along together all the way. So put it all together. ABC. Whatever the weather, just you see. Couple up and join the team. Yeah, yeah. Getting better and better. Well, there's nothing that we cannot do, 'cause 'cause together we'll know we'll get through. We make a team together. 1, 2, 3. We go full steam together. Him, you, me. We roll along together all the way. We make a team together. 1, 2, 3. We go full steam together. Him, you, me. We roll along together all the way.
It was a special holiday on the island of Sodor. Bertie the bus was working harder than ever before. All the engines were busy too. Duck was waiting for his next journey. Near him stood a red bus, but he didn't look friendly like Bertie. The bus growled as he gazed at the happy passengers.
Stupid nonsense, he grumbled. I wouldn't have brought them if I'd known. I'd have had a breakdown or something.
I'm glad you didn't, smiled Duck. You'd have spoiled their fun.
Ah, enjoyment is all you engines live for. One day railways will be ripped up.
Duck felt shocked at such an idea. We have a friend called Bertie, and he's a bus, but he likes the railway. Sometimes he teases us about it, but he'd never want to see it ripped up.
Huh, growled the bus. I know Bertie. He's too small in size to be of any use.
Duck took no notice. That bus is silly, he thought as he steamed away. At the junction, Duck told Oliver all about him. I call him Bulgy, chuckled Oliver. Then he puffed happily away. But that afternoon, when the two engines met again, Oliver was no longer laughing. Bulgy's friend has come, he said. He's rude too. He's taking Bulgy's passengers home so as to leave Bulgy free to steal ours. But he can't, objected Doug. Bulgy says he can get them to the big station before us. Rubbish, replied Doug. It's much further by road. Yes, continued Oliver, but Bulgy says he knows a shortcut. That evening, the engines were preparing for the homeward rush. Where are the passengers? They wondered. Look, shrilled Oliver. Look at Bulgy. He's a mean scarlet deceiver. Bulgy was wearing a large sign saying Railway Bus. Yaboo Snubs! He jeered as he roared away. Come on, puffed Duck to his coaches. Let's see what he's up to. Duck wanted to pay Bulgy out, but he wasn't sure how. Then, in the distance, Duck saw a man waving a red flag. That meant danger. The line here crosses a narrow road, and there was Bulgy, wedged firmly under the bridge. So this was his shortcut, chuckled Duck. He tricked us, shouted Bulgy's passengers. He said he was a railway bus, but he wouldn't accept our return tickets. He wanted us to think railways are no good. Duck's crew examined the bridge. It's risky, but we must help the passengers. Passengers are urgent, agreed Duck. Duck slowly and carefully set off across the bridge. Bulgy wailed as he felt the bridge quiver. Stop! He shouted. It might fall on me. That would serve you right for telling lies, said Duck. But the bridge didn't collapse. Duck made good time and all the passengers caught their trains.
The bridge is now mended, but not, unfortunately, Bulgy and his ways. He never learned sense. He's a hen house now, and his lies can do no harm. The hens never listen to them anyway.
Oliver and his brake van Toad liked working in the big yards, but one morning Toad noticed that Oliver was unhappy. He decided to find out why. "Excuse me, Mr. Oliver, it seems to me that things are not well with you, if you forgive me for mentioning it." "You're quite right, Toad," replied Oliver. "All I do is shunt these trucks onto the turntable. I long for a nice run. It's what an engine really needs." "Quite so, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to the Fat Controller about your problems?" Oliver just grew unhappier, and he was rough with the trucks. "You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous. We want Percy." "Pah, Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you." And he bumped the trucks hard. "You silly engine!" shouted a workman. "It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which'll cause confusion and delay." That night, the Fat Controller came to see Oliver in his shed. "Oliver, you have caused confusion. I thought you could control trucks. You shall work the mail train for a while. Maybe the night air will clear your smoke box." "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir," said Oliver sadly. "Cheer up, old chap," said his driver. "The mail train run is a grand run for a fine engine like you." Oliver smiled, but he still felt he'd let everyone down. His driver took them along the coastal run with the mail train. The sea was calm and the fresh air couldn't help but brighten Oliver's spirits. They made good speed until it was time to collect some important mail from Harold the helicopter. "Come on, Harold." They waited and waited. At last, Harold landed. "Sorry I'm late, Great Western. Had a bit of a problem with one of my arms. Kept letting me down when I was meant to be up. You know how it is," said Harold. "We know that we'll be late for our first run," replied Oliver's driver. Soon they were on their way again. Ahead was a red signal light. Oliver didn't realize that the signalman had dozed off waiting for them. Oliver whistled several times, but the signal stayed red. "There must be something wrong with that signal. We'll go slowly and stop by the signal box," said his driver. But they never reached it. The points before the signal box were switched to an old track. They were going the wrong way. Oliver's fireman was concerned. "We need to find a water tower soon." Instead, they saw an old rundown station. Disaster lay ahead. Meanwhile, the Fat Controller was very worried. "Oliver has not returned. We had better send out a search party." Soon he was high in the sky with Harold. "There they are." "It wasn't Oliver's fault," sighed the driver. "I'm aware of that. I'm just glad you are all safe." Then he saw something. It was an empty old house beside the station. He went to inspect it. When he returned, he spoke to Oliver. "Oliver, you have found another attraction for our island. We'll make this house as good as new, and visitors can come and have tea and crumpets there." Sighed Oliver happily. Getting lost can be interesting, but being found is much nicer, especially when it makes an engine feel really useful.
And every year on the date of the accident, it runs again as a warning to others, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul. Percy, what are you talking about? The ghost train. Driver saw it last night. Where? Asked Thomas and Toby. He didn't say. Oh, it makes my wheels wobble to think of it. Huh, said Thomas. You're just a silly little engine. I'm not scared. Thomas didn't believe in your ghost, said Percy next morning. His driver laughed. Neither do I. It was a pretend ghost on television. Percy was disappointed. That evening, he came back from the harbour. Percy knew where he was, even in the dark. Crow's Farm Crossing. We shan't be long now. He liked running at night. The rails hummed and the signal lights shone green. But a broken cartload of lime lay ahead. Sam the farmer had just gone for help. Percy broke the cart to smithereens. Lime flew everywhere. He puffed quickly to the nearest signal box. Percy's driver explained what had happened. I'll see to it, said the signalman, but you'd better clean Percy or people will think he's a ghost. Percy chuckled. Do let's pretend I'm a ghost and scare Thomas. That'll teach him to say I'm a silly little engine. Toby promised to help. Thomas was being oiled up for his evening train. Percy's had an accident, cried Toby. Poor engine, said Thomas. Botheration! That means I'll be late. They've cleared the line for you, but there's something worse. Out with it, Toby. I can't wait all evening. I've just seen something, said Toby. It looked like Percy's ghost. It said it was coming here to warn us. Huh! Who cares? Don't be frightened, Toby. I'll take care of you. Pee, pee, pip, 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 pee. Let me in! Let me in! Wailed Percy. No, no, not by the smoke of my chimney, chim, chim. I'll chuff and I'll puff and I'll break your door in. Oh dear, exclaimed Thomas. It's getting late. Oh, I'd no idea. Oh, I must find Annie and Clarabel. It was morning when Thomas returned. Where have you been? Asked Toby. Ah, well, said Thomas. I knew you'd be sad about Percy, and I didn't like to intrude. I slept in the goods shed, and... Oh, sorry, can't stop. Got to see a coach about to train. Percy was none the worse for his adventure and was still enjoying himself enormously. He had heard everything. Well, 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 what do you know about that? Anyone would think, chuckled Toby, that our Thomas had just seen a ghost.
Down the hills and round the bend. Percy worked hard at the new harbor. The workmen needed stone for their building. Toby helped, but sometimes the loads of stone were too heavy, and Percy had to fetch them for himself. Sometimes he'd see Thomas. "Well done, Percy. Sir Topham Hatt is very pleased with us." An airfield was close by. Percy heard the airplanes zooming overhead all day. The noisiest of all was a helicopter. "Silly thing," said Percy. "Why can't it go and buzz somewhere else?" One day, Percy stopped at the airfield. "Hello," said Percy. "Who are you?" "I'm Harold." "Who are you?" "I'm Percy. What whirly great arms you've got." "They're nice arms," said Harold. "I can hover like a bird. Don't you wish you could hover?" "Certainly not. I like my rails, thank you." "I think railways are slow," said Harold. "They're not much use and quite out of date." He whirled his arms and buzzed away. Percy found Toby at the quarry. "I say, Toby, that Harold, that stuck-up whirlybird thing, says I'm slow and out of date. Just let him wait. I'll show him." He collected his freight cars and started off, still fuming. Soon they heard a familiar buzzing. "Percy," whispered his driver. "There's Harold. He's not far ahead. Let's race him." "Yes, let's," said Percy. Percy pounded along. The cars screamed and swayed. "Well, I'll be a ding-dong-dang," said the driver. There was Harold. The race was on. "Go it, Percy!" Yelled, "You're gaining!" Percy had never been allowed to run fast before. He was having the time of his life. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" he panted to the cars. "We don't want to! We don't want to!" they grumbled. It was no use. Percy was bucketing along with flying wheels, and Harold was high and alongside. The fireman shovels for dear life. "Well done, Percy," shouted the driver. "We're gaining. We're going ahead. Oh, good boy, good boy." A distant signal warned them that the harbor wharf was near. "Beep, beep, beep. Brakes, conductor, please." The driver carefully checked halted on the wharf. "Oh dear," groaned Percy. "I'm sure we've lost." The fireman scrambled to the cab roof. "We've won! We've won!" he shouted. "Harold's still hovering. He's looking for a place to land." "Listen, boys," the fireman called. "Here's a song for Percy." Said Harold the helicopter to our Percy, "You are slow. Your railway is out of date and not much use, you know. But Percy and his stone cars did the trip in record time, and we beat the helicopter on our old branch line." Percy loved it. "Oh, thank you," he said. He liked the last line best of all, and was a very happy engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine has worked his branch line for many years and knows it very well. "You know just where to stop, Thomas," laughed his driver. "You could almost manage it without me." Thomas had become conceited. He didn't realize his driver was joking. Later, he boasted to the others. "Driver says I don't need him now." "Don't be so daft," snorted Percy. "I'd never go without my driver," said Toby earnestly. "I'd be frightened." "Huh," boasted Thomas. "I'm not scared." "You'd never dare." "I would then. You'll see." The next morning the firelighter came. Thomas drowsed comfortably as the warmth spread through his boiler. Percy and Toby were still asleep. Thomas suddenly remembered. "Silly stick in the mud," he chuckled. "I'll show them. Driver said I could manage without him. I'll just go out. Then I'll stop and wheesh. That'll make them jump." Thomas thought he was being clever. Really, he was only moving because a careless cleaner had meddled with his controls. He soon found his mistake. He tried to wheesh, but he couldn't. He tried to stop, but he couldn't. He just kept rolling along. He didn't dare look at what was coming next. There was the station master's house. The station master was about to have breakfast. "Horrors!" cried Thomas, and shut his eyes. The house rocked. Broken glass tinkled. Plaster was everywhere. Thomas had collected a bush on his travels. He peered into the room through its leaves. He couldn't speak. The station master was furious. His wife picked up her plate. "You miserable engine," she scolded. "Just look what you've done to our breakfast. Now I shall have to cook some more." She banged the door. More plaster fell. This time it fell on Thomas. Thomas felt depressed. Workmen propped up the house with strong poles and laid rails through the garden. Meanwhile, Donald and Douglas arrived. "Dinna fash yourself, Thomas. We'll soon have you back on the rails," they laughed. Donald and Douglas, puffing hard, managed to haul Thomas back to safety. Bits of fencing, the bush, and a broken window frame festooned his front, which was badly twisted. The twins laughed and left him. Thomas was in disgrace. There was worse to come. "You are a very naughty engine." "I know, sir. I'm sorry, sir." Thomas's voice was muffled behind his bush. "You must go to the works and have your front mended. It will be a long job. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, a diesel rail car will do your work.
A diesel, sir?
Thomas spluttered. Yes, Thomas. Diesels always stay in their sheds till they are wanted. Diesels never gallivant off to breakfast in station masters' houses. Henry, James, and Gordon were miserable. They had been shut up for several days for being naughty and longed to be let out again. At last, the Fat Controller arrived. "I hope you are sorry," he said, "and understand that you are not so important after all. We have a new tank engine called Percy who helps pull coaches, and Thomas and Edward have worked the main line nicely. But I will let you out now if you promise to be good." "Yes, sir," said the 3 engines, "we will." "That's right, but please remember that this no shunting nonsense must stop." He then told Percy, Edward, and Thomas that they could go and play on the branch line for a few days. And they ran off happily to find Annie and Clarabelle at the junction. The 2 coaches were so pleased to see Thomas again. Edward and Percy played with trucks. "Stop, stop, stop," screamed the trucks as they were pushed into their proper sidings. But the 2 engines laughed and went on shunting till the trucks were tidily arranged. Next, Edward took some empty trucks to the quarry. Percy was left alone. He didn't mind that a bit. He liked watching trains and being cheeky to the other engines. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he would call, and they got very cross. After a great deal of shunting, Percy was waiting for the signalman to set the point so that he could get back to the yard. He was eager to work, but was being rather careless and not paying attention. Edward had warned Percy, "Be careful on the main line. Whistle to the signalman you are there." But Percy didn't remember to whistle, so the busy signalman forgot him. Percy waited and waited. The points were still against him, so he couldn't move. Then he looked along the main line. Peep, peep! He whistled in horror, for rushing straight towards him was Gordon with the express. Groaned Gordon. "Out of my way!" Percy opened his eyes. Gordon had stopped with Percy's buffers a few inches from his own. But Percy had begun to move. "I won't stay here. I'll run away," he puffed. He went straight through Edward's station and... After that, he was tired, but he couldn't stop. He had no driver to shut off steam and apply the brakes. "I want to stop, I want to stop," he puffed. The man in the signal box saw Percy was in trouble, so kindly set the points. Percy puffed wearily onto a nice empty siding, ending in a big bank of earth. He was too tired now to care where he went. "I want to stop. I want to stop. I have stopped," he puffed thankfully. "Never mind, Percy," said the workmen as they dug him out. "You shall have a drink and some coal, and then you'll feel better." Presently, Gordon arrived. "Well done, Percy. You started so quickly that you stopped a nasty accident." "I'm sorry I was cheeky," said Percy. "You were clever to stop." Then Gordon helped pull Percy out from the bank. Percy is still cheeky because he is that sort of engine, but he is always most careful when he goes on the main line.
Bye.